If you're watching this right now and you haven't hit the like button, Billy, get on it. Bug your brother. Tell him to do the same.
Let's talk John Schneider a little bit. And I have been a defender of him over his tenure as the manager. I do like the guy. I'll be honest, though, the last couple weeks, there's just been some decisions that have been head scratchers. Hindsight's 2020, and you can always rip apart a manager's decisions. It doesn't matter how good manager of the year, the fan base will rip them apart. But last night, after getting 4 big outs, Trevor Richards gets trotted back out there. I'm aware they don't have a long man right now, and I know that Mitch White would solve this problem, which is also a weird thing to say. But, it just felt weird to put him back out there knowing Richards' limitations, then to put in a very sick George Springer for Varsho, who has been great. Danny Jansen pinch hitting. There were just some decisions where I was like, I don't understand what's going on. Is he overthinking it? Is he overmanaging? Like, where are you at on John Schneider?
I'm with you. I'm a big fan of Schneider, kind of like on the whole. I'm also with you in that I didn't love a lot of the decisions we saw in Game 1 against the Phillies and that in the short 2-gamer here. But I feel like it's rare that when a manager puts in, like a manager makes a million decisions over the course of a ball game from before the game even starts when it comes to changing the starting order, the batting order, whatever, who you get the ball goes from the hand of the starter to reliever X, Y, or Z to the hand of the closer. Like there's any number of decisions you make along the way from before the game starts right to the end. It's rare that every decision you make in a single game does not work out, which is I feel like what we saw last night. Like sometimes you'll see like one decision not go someone's way, but a couple other decisions do go his way. And I think you're right. Like virtually, unfortunately, every single decision culminated in something not going the Blue Jays' way, whether it was leaving Trevor Richards in too long, not bringing Swanson in soon enough, for example, even though he had been warming for quite some time, it would seem. Maybe leaving Pearson out there, or maybe even putting him into super high leverage situations
high leverage
to begin with. Yeah, and then the one I took exception with the most, because bullpen usage can be a little iffy, and Trevor Richards, I mean, there was that one inning where he looked nasty. Like he got some of the most dangerous batters in the Philly lineup. So I admit I did question why he didn't come out earlier, but that's not the one I had the most quibbles with. It was the George Springer pinch hitting for Daulton Varsho with the bases loaded. Not because Varsho, and not even because Springer is the guy you could bring in, but Springer came to the plate and he looked visibly sick, right? Like he clearly was not 100% healthy. If this was healthy George Springer, or let's say he had gotten injured and the injury was like his foot was sore or something, and he just had to stand at the plate to swing, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, like I can live with that. But seeing Springer come up and he looked like he was trying to keep his lunch down, basically, and it's like that's the guy you want to bring up. Like I'm a huge, massive fan of George Springer, but like if he was sick enough to not start the game, he was probably sick enough to stay on the bench. And it's not like you're pinch hitting for like Kevin Biggio here. You're pinch hitting for Daulton Varsho of all people.
That's exactly what I was just going to say too. It's not like it was Espinal at the back of the lineup there where I would have been all right with that. George Springer isn't, listen, he's been unlucky, but it's not like he's super hot right now either. Right. I would almost give him a pass if Springer was so hot. It's funny because we were sitting, my wife and I were sitting in the right field bleachers in Pittsburgh, and buddy, he was like, you could visibly see he was sick. Like he was wiping his nose, he was coughing between the plays. He was literally squatted down with his butt on the ground and his knees up, just like, I was just like, I kept saying, I'm like, he's not playing in Philly. Like, this is insane. He's even out there right now. So to see him be pinch hit there, I have to agree with you there. When it comes to John Schneider, I know that he's only been the manager, not even a full year. And listen, I always feel like experience is acquired. It's not given. Do you think that much like a player acquires experience and becomes better, that the same thing applies to the manager, and that hopefully decisions like this, even though, yes, we're all pulling our hair out now in May, does come back and benefit us in September and October?
I do think that. I really do think there's definitely like a bit of a learning process or a learning curve when it comes to basically anyone in any sport, right? Like you look at some of the newer head coaches in a bunch of other teams, whether even if you want to look outside of Major League Baseball, you look at other coaches that maybe brought something new, and then after a certain point, a lot their voices needed to be replaced as well, right? I mean, I think I draw the parallel sometimes with John Schneider to a certain degree, and it could, because you can only do this to a certain degree, obviously, but with like Nick Nurse, for example, with the Toronto Raptors, because Nick Nurse, for example, he was a much respected assistant to Dwayne Casey. They fire Casey after he won Coach of the Year, and then they bring in Nurse, and then they make all these trades. They bring in Kawhi Leonard, they ditch DeMar DeRozan, and then all of a sudden the team goes out and wins a championship. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly like an apples to apples comparison with getting rid of Charlie Montoyo and promoting the bench coach John Schneider to the manager position, but at the same time, I do think there is a certain aspect of Schneider gets a bit of a time to put his own stamp on things, gets his own time to learn, and then we'll see what their club thinks of him, right? He clearly had some kind of existing prior relationship with a lot of the stars, whether it's Vladdy or Bo or some of these guys when he was with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. So I think I'm willing to give him, maybe a couple more seasons, because the other half of it too is like even the most successful managers probably will get replaced at some point, right? Like the most successful managers in Major League Baseball right now are guys that have either already won the World Series, so they kind of have a bit of cachet, or they're guys who their squads are going to like the AL or NLCS every other season. And we already know what the variance is like in those spots anyways, right? So I feel like the shelf life for a major league manager, if everything goes perfectly, is still only like what? Maybe like 7 to 8 years max, probably, right?
And that's insane. Like, exactly. Yeah. Like you look at Kevin Cash and you're like, man, that guy, I don't know how he's doing it.
Voodoo. That's how the Rays are doing it. Voodoo.
That's the whole Rays system.
Here's one thing with John Schneider. Like you said, the good decisions, bad decisions, it's a little bit of a coin toss almost, right? Like sometimes they go your way, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you look like a doofus, sometimes you look like a genius. He's not losing the locker room. It's not Oliver Marmol. This is not a dysfunctional team. So this, when we want to complain about John Schneider, it could be a lot worse, right?
Oh, Adam, can you imagine if we were having a conversation? I think, again, this is a terrible comparison, but let's just say they were like, Alondra Kirk's going to be the fourth outfielder, and we're not going to have him catch anymore. And you're like, oh, that makes no sense, actually. That makes not even a lick of sense. That's exactly what's going on, or very close to what's going on with Wilson.
And he's finding out about it at the same time as all of you.
It's truly wild. Like I feel like the Cardinals are playing the Cubs the other day, and in Wrigley, I believe. And so it was Contreras' return to the team he obviously played for and the confines he was familiar with. It was just kind of hilarious because I think he hit a home run or a very long double, and he was getting the booze. He was kind of like, yeah, give me the booze. And it was a rare situation where it was like the existing team, the existing front office, the old team, the old front office, and the old fans all hated this guy at the same time. So I don't know what's going on there. So you're right. Adam is totally right. It could always be a million times worse. And honestly, I would still frankly put John Schneider as young, quote unquote, as he is in a managerial position. I would still honestly put him in like the upper half of Major League Baseball, because like the team is a pretty good team. It's up and down, but they've played a million road games and they're still in the upper half of a division where basically everyone has won 20 games. Like that's insane, right?
I think he does have a good team, and I feel like I could probably manage this team to above 500, right? Like, but I think it's good that he hasn't sunk he's good, and he just hasn't sunk the ship, and I mean that in a good way. I know obvious. That sounds like such a negative Nancy. I don't mean it like that. I mean it in a positive,
but it's obvious,
reassuring way.
Yeah, like
it is possible to sink a really talented team. Look at the White Sox. Right.
It's obvious this team has a genuine love for their manager, and that cannot be said across Major League Baseball. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the White Sox, right? Adam mentioned the White Sox, and like Charlie Montoyo is the bench coach for the White Sox now. And did you guys see that report about how like Luis Robert apparently didn't even know his
Know
name,
his name.
which I saw that and I thought to myself, is this a joke or is this just how he is, like how Luis Robert is? So it's true, like there are genuinely some really dysfunctional relationships where I'm sure the locker room does not respect or the clubhouse doesn't respect the manager. And I genuinely don't think that's the case for John Schneider. I do think he gets a lot of leash from the players, the front office. And I think it's also important to note, as far as decision making goes, I do genuinely also wonder how much of a manager's decision making, even in the moment, is made by he himself versus like a choir of voices, including like the high performance department, as Barker likes to call them, the khakis. I wonder.
Totally.